B1 ended up coming over after I was kind of like, all right, I can interact with people who are sober right now. And we watched this show on, first off, I started watching that show Tires on Netflix with Shane Gillis or Gillian or whatever the hell his name is, Shane Gillis. I actually didn't find it very funny. I know Mikey loved it and a lot of other people recommended it, but I just didn't find it very funny. I'm not going to lie. So anyway, we were looking for something to watch. We pulled up HBO Max and I came across this. This is the show that I found to watch. It's called Six Schizophrenic Brothers. It's about a family with 12 children, and 6 of them were diagnosed schizophrenic. The headline says, "One family torn apart by madness." So this was on Max. Holy shit. This was one of the most intense things I have ever watched in my entire life. I mean, incredibly intense. I actually have a small segment from it. It's a little bit hard to hear because it's kind of fuzzy, or not fuzzy. It was somebody recorded it from a TV recording. Let me see if I can boost this audio real quick. Give me one sec, guys. Boost that. See if that helps a little bit. So, this is a segment. This is about 12 kids in the 1960s, 70s. Irish Catholic family, wealthy family. The father was a professor professor of, I believe, political science at the Air Force Base in Colorado. So they did well. Irish Catholic family, like lots of kids, 12 of them. My dad, Irish Catholic family, they had 6 kids. So that was kind of the thing people did back in the 60s if you were an Irish Catholic family. These people, sadly enough, were stricken by a disease that also has afflicted my family, schizophrenia. My uncle had it. My great aunt had it. My cousin has it. And it's something that has, it's been a part of my life for a long time. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Not me. I don't have schizophrenia. But we'll talk a little bit about the people in my life and how that affected me. But speaking of people being affected by it and family members and things like that, here is a video, a segment from Six Schizophrenic Brothers. This is Mary. She's the youngest daughter of the 12 kids. There were 10 boys and 2 girls. And so 6 of the boys turned out to have schizophrenia. So there's 6 healthy, and 2 of them are girls, 4 boys. And this is the youngest daughter. She's one of the healthy kids, talking about her experience growing up in a house full of schizophrenia.
I'm Mary Christine Galvin, which my mother always said was named after Mary, the mother of Christ. I was born into this large Irish Catholic family. I was the youngest of 12 children, 10 boys and 2 girls. Don, Jim, John, Brian, Michael, Richard, Joseph, Mark, Matthew, Peter, Margaret, and Mary. 6 of my brothers diagnosed schizophrenics. My mom describes that she saw signs but couldn't really identify in her heart and mind what was going on. There was something going on with Jim. Peter breaking all the windows in the house. Donald, he dismembered a dog in the bathtub at home. It was like a snowball effect. My parents blaming themselves. There was so much despair and so much hopelessness and so much confusion.
Okay, so that was kind of the setup at the beginning of the movie, or excuse me, the documentary, to kind of tell you a little bit about these 6 brothers. Man, where to start? So I'll probably definitely, I'm already holding them back. So I'll definitely cry while I talk about this, probably several times, because like I said, this is Well, watching it was, it's funny when we first started it, B1 was like, "Are you sure you should be watching this right now?" Because she knows that this, how I feel about this subject. And so, by the way, 844 hit 844-448-3862 if you have any kind of experience with what I'm talking about right now. Um, so growing up as a little kid, my parents were divorced. I lived with my dad and my stepmom, and on the weekends I would go visit my mom. Now, when I would go visit my mom, a lot of times because of where I lived and where she lived, in between those two places, my grandpa and my uncle lived. They lived together. My grandpa was a war hero, turned into with bad PTSD, turned into an alcoholic, but like I said, fucking war hero, Silver Star, Bronze Star. Yeah. Anyway, then my uncle lived with him, and the reason my uncle lived with him is because my uncle had schizophrenia. Uh, we, we called him Uncle Tiger. I actually don't know how he ever even got that name. I'll have to ask my mom how he got that nickname. I don't know how he got that nickname. But anyway, his name was Doug. But I never ever called him Uncle Doug ever. It was Uncle Tig. So he was real sick my whole life. We would go through stages where he would be okay. He would be kind of lucid and normal. And when I say normal, that would mean not having outbursts, not yelling, throwing things, weird episodes where he, drinking would get out of hand. Usually a lot of the times with him, and a lot of schizophrenics that I've learned over the years is they either overtake their medication or they refuse to take their medication. And a lot of times the ones that refuse to take their medication, like a lot of mentally ill people, they will turn to alcohol or drugs. And he did all that when he was younger. He did a lot of LSD, was a big time hippie, tripped a lot, smoked a lot of weed. I'm sure he was doing other stuff too, if I had to guess, but he drank a lot. When I was younger, he had stopped doing drugs and was just a full blown hardcore alcoholic. So I remember on one Thanksgiving, I watched him take a whole, imagine this was a glass, just a full pint glass, full of brandy. And I watched him just literally just glug the whole thing straight down. It was 10 shots worth of, did I say brandy? I meant bourbon. 10 shots at least of bourbon, at least. Might have been like 15. It was a big pint glass, like what you drink a fucking beer out of. He drank a whole thing of fucking bourbon, straight, no ice, poof. And then during dinner, he started having issues. And it's hard. I think I may have honestly blocked out a lot of the incidents with him because they were always very scary. I was never necessarily totally in fear of him. Like I thought he was going to hit me or hurt me or anything like that. I just never knew what to expect next. And so watching this family, while, thankfully my uncle was never violent. He'd have outbursts, but he was like a gentle giant and he was an intellectual and he, his schizophrenia manifested in voices. But thankfully, these voices weren't telling him to harm others. I do believe there was self-harm involved. But it didn't really cause him to want to hurt other people. Unlike this documentary I watched, where the majority of these 6 brothers who had schizophrenia were all very, very violent. In fact, one of them shot his wife and killed himself, and there were lots of other. One of the older brothers would have outbursts, and he would hold a knife to the mother's throat. And you hear these stories, and you go, "Well, why weren't these people all institutionalized?" Well, it was because the family had a lot of. They were in high society within the Air Force base in Colorado, so they had they had an image to uphold. And having a schizophrenic son or sons was not part of the image that they wanted to portray. So instead of having the kid, while the kids were in and out of state mental hospitals their whole lives, initially, um, they were just keeping them at home. They were just they'd keep all 10 of these kids ended up living in a house together, while 6 of them had schizophrenia. So it was just an absolute madhouse there, literally, and no pun intended. It was crazy, and it made me think about how my mom and my aunt and even my grandpa, how they all tried so hard to do their best to take care of my uncle. And watching this, I really, and I was so young, and so I was, like I said, just kind of, when my mom picked me up, I just wanted to go to my mom's house. You know what I mean? I just want to go there, go hang out. It was a little bit of a vacation from my real strict stepmom and my, kind of overbearing dad. So I didn't want to stop at Grandpa's house and see my drunk grandpa and my crazy Uncle Ty, because it was just, I never knew what I was going to get when I went over there. And I hate to say that because it probably upsets my mom. She's watching, but that's just the fact of the matter. There were times where I would just be like, I'm going to sit in the car. You can just go in and say hi, because I didn't want to deal with it. And I know that's wrong, but in hindsight, I regret doing it. But so it made me think a lot about, like I said, it made me think the way these parents would take their children, the sick children, and keep them at the home versus putting them in a mental hospital. It made me think about my family, and it made me think about how my grandpa did it, my mom did it, my aunt did it. Everybody tried to take him in and take care of him, but usually he would fight taking his medication, or in some cases would overtake his medication, because some of them were kind of narcotic and downer, and would make you feel all fucked up, especially had a couple drinks with it. So his alcoholism mixed with his schizophrenia was just like it was a really bad thing for him. And his story was crazy. I mean, I think when he was 17, he ran away from home and just got on a bus, and nobody knew where he was, and just disappeared for a whole summer. And then they ended up finding him, and he went across the country, and then ended up come back, and he got arrested, I think, in Chicago for something. Just like a typical story you'd see this is what I heard. I was watching this documentary and hearing these stories about these guys being out in public, and they were just doing something strange, like mumbling to themselves, and they would end up getting arrested and booked. And then one of them would freak out and punch a cop, and they get arrested for even more. So it was just this snowball effect that happens due to this mental illness. And as I was watching it, I just felt so bad that I've not been more thankful to my mom, or given her more flowers, as the kids say, for her efforts to take care of him. I just never really. It took me watching this documentary to understand this illness more, and how much it affects the people around them. And then and this is probably where I'll cry. Then it made me realize, watching the son of that woman, Mary, I played the video for. So the one, she's one of the healthy ones, but she had a kid, and the youngest daughter, Mary, had subjected her children, so grandkids of the political science. I know I'm getting a little offhand. It's hard to follow. 12 kids, youngest kid. She gets married when she's an adult, has younger kids. In an effort to normalize mental illness, she immersed her children in mental illness. And this is what happened to me. I felt like my mom was always talking about my uncle's schizophrenia and how it affected not how it affected her, his outbursts, and how we've had to move him to here or move him to there or whatever. And the reason I bring up the kid is because it reminded me of when I was a kid, dealing with all of this mental illness around me, and how and the kid said something that made me just start sobbing. Is it because he said that the best day of my life will be the day I turn 26. And that was And I knew exactly what he meant by that. And that's what made me start crying, because usually schizophrenia will have already manifested in men by the time they're 26. It's usually right in the age group, like between 16. Well, in this case, a lot of these kids have started very young, but oftentimes it's late teens, early 20s, up to 26. And I knew this growing up. I was always very scared that I was going to end up with this. Really scared of it. So much so that I knew that I was just like this kid. I was like, I just got to make it to 26 and I'm going to be okay. And it was like really crazy hearing another person say feelings that you like have never really said out loud to anybody else. It was crazy. It was just nuts. And then he went on even further, saying even more stuff about being afraid of it. Like when I was younger and I would lose my temper, or I'd have an outburst, or I would cry, something would make me cry a lot, like obviously, knowing me, guys. And then just other little things, wanting to do substances, the desire to be inebriated. Like, I would be worried that these were all signs of schizophrenia when I was little, when I was younger. I was always afraid of these things, that this was going to afflict me. And I hit 26. It didn't hit me. I don't hear voices. I don't have any, I have outbursts just because I'm anger and rage monster sometimes, which I've gotten better at. But it really made this documentary affected me. I was sobbing through the last episode because it's moved from fear of me getting it, and now it's moved to fear of my kids getting it. Keely may have, I think she's 22 or 23, I can never remember. She, fortunately, women mature mentally and physically usually earlier than men. So I don't know the exact year that it usually kind of wraps up for women, but if I had to guess, she's probably, in the clear. Now, my boys, and they say schizophrenia can skip a generation. Because like these six kids that were crazy, the two parents, not crazy. Nothing wrong with them. No schizophrenia, nothing. Now, I wish they would have gone into detail about the grandparents of these six kids. Were the grandparents crazy? Or somebody in that family, above the parents in this family, so the grandparents or someone has schizophrenia. It skips a generation usually. That's what they say. So I'm worried to death about my boys. Scared to death. Because this happened to my younger cousin. I have a cousin who's in his early 20s. His whole entire life growing up was just the sweetest kid. I mean, like, he was a kind little boy, good little teenage boy, just a sweet kid, good grades, never got in trouble, wouldn't raise his voice, was the sweetest kid. No signs of anything being wrong with him. Then his late teens hit, early 20s, and he essentially has exactly the same version of schizophrenia as my uncle. And it's heartbreaking because my poor aunt, she had to deal with it with her brother. And then now her son has it, which screws with the skipping a generation thing, I guess. I don't know. But that's what I've been told in the past. Or maybe that's just what I was told so I would feel better and hope I wouldn't get it because I was worried about getting it so much. But so yeah, I worry about my boys right now. I worry that they might get to, they're still young. One's 15, one's 12. We got, 11 years for the big one till we know he's in the clear, and then we got, I don't know, however many, 14 years then, I guess, at that point from there. So with the other one. So it's my biggest fear in life, that my sweet great little boys will end up losing their minds, and there will be nothing we can do about it. Sorry to be a downer, but that's just what it just is what it is. It was a very moving documentary. I highly recommend anybody watching it. You don't have to have family members who are afflicted with this to appreciate it. It's mind-boggling to see what this family had to go through and what these men have turned out to be, and some of them who are real sick have been institutionalized. Other ones are out on the street, and here's one of them actually who talks about whether or not he actually has schizophrenia.
Do you think you'll ever get cured of schizophrenia?
That whole schizophrenia thing was my mother's notion that I'm mentally ill. I might have been a little schizophrenic because I was with a lot of people that were schizophrenic, but it doesn't make me a schizophrenic.
Now, again, that kind of, I don't know if he's on medication, but that mumbling fast talk is a lot of times my uncle would have that depending on what sort of medication he was on. So I don't know if that guy's on medication or not or what, but it's a serious thing, man. It really is a scary thing to know that it's just could just literally be just sitting there waiting on a gene, just waiting for a gene. And it's sad because it can be triggered. Some of these boys had traumatic events and other ones didn't. So, or maybe ones that they didn't know of. And some people say that schizophrenia can be triggered by a traumatic event. Some people say that it can be, that it's just there and it'll just pop up and happen. A couple of these kids were, they suspect molested by priests, or one of them actually outright admitted that he got molested by a priest, a Catholic priest. A couple of the other brothers would go on retreats with this brother who said that he got molested, and they would, so perhaps something happened along those lines to those two too, and that's what triggered it. But really crazy documentary. Check it out on HBO Max, Six Schizophrenic Brothers. I highly recommend you guys check it out.